Cris, your family decided to pay it forward, so to speak, and donate the WestJet gift of flight that you'd received to the Kidney Foundation because your son had been diagnosed with kidney disease. So can you take us back to the beginning and really tell us what led to his diagnosis and started you on that journey?
The whole thing started when he was 19.
Yeah.
Today he is 24, but when he was 19 and a half, he became quite ill after being very, very healthy. We ended up taking him to the hospital. He doesn't remember a whole lot of it because he was actually coughing up blood at the time. We went to the hospital where they said it was going to be a long night. And that evening, within 5 hours, he was transferred to the ICU. It was surreal because at that time we thought it was just pneumonia. That it was a bad case of pneumonia. That evening when we were in the ICU, they said to me his kidneys were starting to shut down, but they had no idea why. Within an hour after being in the ICU, the decision was made to put him on life support to keep him alive because he wasn't taking in oxygen and his kidneys were shutting down. The next day, the decision was made to take him to higher care and move him to a higher care facility, at which time we went to this facility, and the wonderful team of physicians there, especially a nephrologist that works at that hospital, said to me that she felt it was a disease called Goodpasture syndrome, which is a rare autoimmune disease, and most people have never heard of it, including doctors, because it is so rare. The hospital we were in had just recently received a machine called plasmapheresis. What that does is it takes the blood out of your body, separates the plasma from your blood, and then you are donated new plasma to take the antibodies from this autoimmune disease out of your body in hopes of stopping it.
Yeah.
He was in a coma during this time, so we said, yes, let's do it. They did it for one night. He was starting to improve. Unfortunately, the blood work came back showing that it was negative. So they had to make a decision because he was still declining to transfer him again to another higher care facility, at which time he was moved again to a Lower Mainland hospital. And when I arrived there, they were keeping him alive manually at that point, which was difficult. At that point, they gave my son less than 5% chance of survival. And it's difficult to talk about, but I think it's important that everybody knows that this can happen. He stayed in that hospital for 8 weeks in a coma. During that time, he was continuously on dialysis. He was on life support. He was on every kind of medication that they could give him because they still didn't know what was causing his disease other than he had tested positive for a coronavirus that causes the common cold. So they thought that that was what it was. He had started to get better, and after being in a coma for 8 weeks, he woke up. The hardest thing is you think when somebody wakes up from a coma, they're gonna be normal, it's gonna be fine, they're gonna be completely fine, and they're not. They can't walk. So they're hoisted up in the air. They have to go through physiotherapy. They can't sit up. They can't eat because they have to relearn all of that. Their body has to relearn all of that.
That part sucks.
He went through drug withdrawals because of all the medication that they had to give him in the hospital to keep him alive. And it was a journey. After 10 weeks, you were released from the hospital.
Yeah.
And the saga doesn't end there.
Mitch's kidneys and lungs were shutting down. Things were really touch and go, as you say, for a couple of months there. Must have been a devastating time in your life. Can you share with us your feelings, your fears? What was going through your mind at this time?
I mean, in the beginning, he doesn't recall actually going to the hospital.
I remember seeing my cousin there, but that's about it.
Because everything was hitting him so quickly, I guess that's the way of the body protecting itself, is to not allow you to remember that. So what he went through, he went from not remembering being sick to waking up with tubes in his mouth and waking up from a coma and not totally understanding where he was. I think that's more the frightening part for him. Is
it's definitely more mental than physical pain that went on.
My goodness. And how are you holding it together, Cris?
Some days you can't.
Some days it's hard. It's really difficult because that was just the first part of the journey, and the journey just kept continuing.
Cris and Mitch, you are both so inspirational, and this is such an important story to share. Can you stay with us a bit longer here on Plugged In?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back talking more with Cris and Mitch in just a moment.